Hi, my name is Benedict. This video is about mixing. Now, there are millions of videos out there about mixing, and some of them are good. Some of them do far more damage than good. Actually, honestly, I think most do far more damage than good. And I mean that in numbers. There are good people out there. I'm not going to tell you, you've got to work that out for yourself. But there's a lot of stuff which comes under what I put under the tips and tricks, 10 tips and tricks for how to mix, or this is the tip you've got to do, or what have you. And they do a lot of damage because often they're either tips that are misunderstood, things that do get done but are misunderstood, therefore don't get done that way or at that time or as much as people think. Or they give the impression that this is baseline mixing. Now, there's a real lack of material out there for how to just do a basic mix that's going to work. And I get that because everybody wants to do the pro mix, the one that's guaranteed to win them Grammy Awards and get to kiss Elton John, all this kind of, well, it's shit. If you can't do basic mixing, all these extra things are irrelevant. And it doesn't matter how producery you feel by sidechaining the this to the that and the other, and using gappers and this, that, and the other. It's irrelevant because you haven't learned how to mix. Now, in the early days, a mix engineer was actually called a balance engineer. So the task that they performed was finding the right balance of the stuff they'd got in front of them to get the record out there to sell. A record that sold was a record that was good. It had something that people liked about it. Now, I know people go on and go, oh, but this is great, and you like it, and that's fine. But one of the problems also with this approach to you get the right tips and tricks is that we're chasing technicalities rather than the magic of the music. Now, that's probably fine if you're mixing Cardi G, Anne, or Taylor Swift or whatever, because that whole market is nothing but novelty. If you are an indie musician, which I assume because you're watching this, then the thing that you need to be chasing is engagement. And the best way to get engagement is without trickery. When you listen to great records, I was listening to Ofra Haza's first record in the car on the way to pick up the girls, and then Richard Clapton on the way back. And in both cases, they are great records with a lot of story around them, a lot of success around them, and there's no trickery in them. Yes, maybe they can say, oh, we did this to make that happen at the time, but when you listen, you're not hearing trickery. You're not hearing side chaining. You're not hearing, multiband, this, that, and the other. So this will be presented as though it's simple, but it's going to seem complex and it's going to take time. I could do this a lot quicker, but the problem is I'd just say I'd do this and you'd go away mystified. Why did I do that? So we'll break it down. I'm going to show you, everybody likes these numbers, how to make a good working mix in 5 steps. What we're going to do is we're going to work through 5 steps. There may be some debate as to what order we do these in, but I'm going to show you the order in which I'm going to do them, because this is basically how I do it, and I know a lot of old school, serious, trained mix engineers would do it. Step 1 is going to be reverb. Step 2 is going to be the levels of each of the components of our mix. Step 3 is going to be panning things. Step 4 is going to be getting the tone right. And then step 5 is finalizing our mix so that we can actually put it out there. Quite simple. It's going to get complex as we go through, but most of the going through is going to be me explaining how that works. Let's start with what we've got as a raw material. see there, I have run off, I've bounced down, I've rendered just a master of exactly what we're hearing here. This is nothing but the instruments put in a mix. They're just presets. I shouldn't say just presets, because they're all my presets. Look, all made by me. But I'm saying just because there has been no particular effort put into making the most flowful of pieces. I try to represent the kind of thing that is not unusual to have come across in a mix, whether that's electronic type music, or, you know, your basic guitar bands, you know, 3 or 4 people in a band, and they send over stuff that's not overly elegant. So I'm going to show how we're going to make the most of very simple material. Because, again, while it's easy to say, oh, well, we'll sidechain everything to everything else, and we'll put on a thing that's going to distort it, and we're going to make it chopped up and what have you, that's just wrong. It's not honouring the material. It's just getting producery and basically shitting all over your stuff, and probably trying to polish a turd as well. Because this ain't great, and nor is it meant to be great. It's not about whether you like this piece or whether you even like the way I mix it, but just to see how simply we can really mix. So the first thing is reverb. Let's go up here. You should always, always, always have a reverb for your mix. This is the room. This is the environment in which your piece, your story you're about to tell occurs. Is it in a cave? Is it in a little tin box? Is it in a wardrobe if we're the Cure? What's the space in which this occurs? And I notice a lot of mixes these days where there's been no attempt to put any kind of reverb in at all. And I know dry mixes are the fashion, but geez, your stuff sounds horrible because you're missing out the bit that says this is where this lives. So it's like taking a girl on a date and you don't actually take her anywhere. Literally nowhere. You don't say, let's walk down and sit on the fence and look at the alcoholics walk by. You just simply take her nowhere and then wonder why there's no kind of feeling of special. You haven't value added to that situation. So we need to value add. And the best way to value add is reverb. So that needs to be on ascend. How this works in your DAW is your business. I'm going to assume you know how to use your DAW. But most of them have the ability to send, which means you send some of the signal off to what's called a bus, and on that bus you will put a reverb. Now it's important that the dry be completely down and the wet be completely up. And you send the music to that. So the most obvious bit to hear there will obviously be the kick drum. Let's just solo this fellow. Reverb, no reverb. So take off our solo. Reverb in, reverb out. Now, I will assume that you're using decent speakers. I can't hear much of anything at all because I'm in cans. I loathe these things. I use them only to get the job done. So make sure you use a reverb. Lack of reverb is a true rookie error. The number 2 rookie error there, and this used to be the number 1 rookie error, is too much reverb. But I would rather hear too much reverb than not enough reverb. A lack of reverb just leaves everything dry and creepy feeling, like having someone speak to you right up in your face. It's just like really uncomfortable. You don't want to do that. So put a space around it. What that space will be is entirely up to you. Chances are your reverb unit came with a pile of presets. Failing that, I have a video or 2 on reverb. I've got written articles on reverb as well. So there's plenty of help on reverb if you want it. None of this tips and tricks stuff. It's just, is it a big room? Is it a small room? Is it a bright room? Is it a dull room? What do we need to represent the overall feel of our track? If it's a sad song, My Baby Done Left Me, you probably don't want a bright reverb because it's boo-hoo territory. Therefore, it's going to want to be probably dark, maybe long, or dark and short because, oh, boo-hoo, I'm going to sit in my little room, in my little world and feel sorry for myself. Whereas if it's a pop track, you probably want a short, because it's fast, bright reverb, because it's... So your reverb tells people things about what your track is saying as well. Let's just whack this into a loop mode. So reverb. If we feel like, because at the moment I've got minus 12 dB sent from everything, and this is good. This is a good thing about Reason. It defaults to minus 12 dB. I turn on a send to reverb, and it's at minus 12 dB. Many other DAWs set default to full send. You know, you turn on your reverb and you get this. Horrible, horrible, horrible. So if you've got one of those DAWs that do that, whatever, probably set them all to minus 12 dB and turn your reverb on. Now, too much reverb on drums can be problematic. So I give you a couple of simple ideas as to how you may solve that. The simplest one is to pull it back to minus 15 or minus 18 dB. So it's taking 3 or 6 dB off. If you're ever unsure, use your rules of 3. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18. That in terms of dB is simple numbers to use. I don't want you to spend your whole life going, I'm going to move everything by 3 dB. But if you move things by 3 dB, then you get a sense of, well, okay, that's what this has achieved. That's what that's achieved. That's probably a bit too far. So you know now it's somewhere in between 3 and 6. Easy. It's a way of simplifying things for yourself. So I'm going to put that at minus 18. Another thing you can do is to have no reverb on drums, but be very careful with that, especially if you've got large drums. That can become very problematic. But if you've got tiny drums like these little fellas here, they can get lost in their reverb fairly easily. So if your minus 18 or 21 or 24 is kind of not cutting it, consider going really low or turning off altogether. Because what happens with reverb is that it gives us a sense of space, distance. Everybody's obsessed with width. You'll find I'm not a big fan of width at all. I think it does a lot of damage. But depth, front to back, that's really important. You know, if you're trying to get the attention of a pretty girl, you're going to look at where she is in the room. If you're trying to get the attention of a pretty girl who's at the back of the room, are you going to spend your time looking down the top of the girl right in front of you? No, because she's not going to get the impression that you're interested in her. You're going to notice the ones in front of you, but you're going to keep looking at that one out there, which means that your gaze goes out there. This is important. You've got to tell the listener where things are. If you want something to seem more present, closer to the listener, then a little less reverb. If you want it to seem like it's in the back of the room, more reverb. Easy. So if we want our drums to seem like they come forward, and let's say we want our secondary kit, which is this fella here, to seem sort of fairly forward and very clear, then we can pull its reverb right back. Sorry, you will see me struggle a little bit with one screen. Bass. Basses we can have quite wet or really dry. For the moment, I'll say whatever I set my main drum kit to. If I've set this to minus 18, I'll probably set my bass to that as well. because generally speaking, you want your drum and bass to work together. I've got a second kit in this, which is a little unusual, but quite commonly I get sent 2 kits or multiples of kits, or bits and pieces of different kits. So you've got to decide which is the main one and which is the secondary one. Here, clear difference between main and secondary. So my bass, I've set where I've set my drums. That feels like it's probably about right, as much as anything could be right in these abominations. Pad is our next one. So where are we going to go with our pad? What's it doing? Now, it's playing more than a pad roll. It's actually got a it's got a melodic roll as well. It's a pad sound, but it's not just sitting there like this. It's kind of a melody synth. It's got a fair bit of a reverb on it already, I should imagine. But let's say for the moment we do want to give it a little bit more. We don't want to give it too much, because if we give it a lot, while it sounds great on its own, it's just going to turn to mush in the mix. You do not want to make soup. So 12, let's say 9, about 9 dB. That pushes it forward in terms of reverb. It's saying we're a little back, but what's happened is that as we've added our send, we've added level to our master a little bit. So this has actually gone up by, I'm not sure how many dB, let's say 3 dB. It's not true, but let's say that. There'd be math somewhere, don't care. But either way, we've added overall level, which means that we're going to need to pull this back a little bit. Let's say it's 1.5. So what that is now going to say to us is it's lowered itself in volume and it's got more reverb. It's a ratio thing. Lots of kick drum, not very much reverb. Not so much pad, lots of reverb. Overall, we want that to sort of balance out, but that's going to say our pad is further back in the room. Cool. This is a problem. If you were listening to this mix first time through, very quiet, you might go, oh, that's pretty. But it's actually a problem. As we get the level up, it makes a mess. But we can't just delete it. We've got to find a solution. Reverb, well, we've got to decide, do we want this fairly forward or do we want to push this right back? Let's hear what we've got as we do this. Dry. Exceedingly wet. Things again always kind of sound cool, solid, exceedingly wet, but probably not a great idea. We do want a certain amount of wetness, but we want a certain amount of clarity, so let's leave this right where it was at -12. It's a safe number. And then we've got our FM'd guitar. It's got quite a lot of sustain or decay. So it's really going to come down to, when we mix, how forward do we want that to seem? Easier to say, oh, well, that's going to be our lead sound, so we want it really forward. Yeah, but it has to be beautiful. And things without reverb are rarely beautiful. You can get away with drums without reverb, but vocals and instruments without reverb is normally just ugly. So put it in the room. So again, we will sit with our -12 dB, and that is cool. So the difference you hear there will be very subtle. So don't expect that this is going to be like, oh, wow, there's huge changes there. But it's more a case of, if I was listening to my speakers and I go back and I sit on my couch there, get myself more of that equilateral, because you can't hear squat in these god-awful things, then there'd just be a nicer sense of the world in which this piece lives. That's good. So that's point 1. We're done. Now we've got to look at level. We've got a couple of places that we can attack level from. One of them is with the faders. The other place is with our main gains up the top. Not all mixers have this. I noticed that a lot of DAWs don't have this gain on the front of the channel, and I sort of think, you poor bastards. But if you've got it, use it. If you don't, well, I guess you don't miss it. But you can always set your levels up at the instrument here as well, bearing in mind that the level from the instrument is driving anything else that you might be using, overdrives, compressors, what have you. Now, we're not going to use much in the way of compressors here deliberately, but we do have, let's just shunt him over there, we do have this guitar going into an overdrive. Now, if we turn its level down, we're going to change the sound of this drive. So if we want to change the level and we're not doing it our fader, then we would change it possibly here. But let's think, what do we need in terms of our levels? There are a couple of ways of attacking this, and depending upon what you want to achieve, one method is more appropriate than another. If we're trying to do the EDM thing, then people are going to go, oh, well, the most important thing in the mix is the drum. I've got to get the kick drum right, and then everything else is going to hinge around that. If anyone who knows me knows I am not a fan of this approach. I think it causes a lot of trouble, because the thing is, you get your kick drum, you solo it, you make it the best kick drum ever, and then you've got no space left to mix in. And besides, let me tell you, much as you like to feel otherwise, kick drums are a dime a dozen. How many songs do you listen to that have kick drums? How many songs do you listen to that have kick drums that really essentially sound the same as each other? That's like most of them. So if you're looking to try to differentiate yourself, differentiating yourself by doing exactly the same thing as everybody else does is probably not the smartest way to do it. So the other approach, which I am far more a fan of, is to go from the what's the most interesting or unique part of this mix. And that's this guy. Why? The sound's kind of kooky, but it's because it's the melody. It's the bit that people are going to remember. Remember a kick drum? You go, oh yeah, I remember every kick drum I ever heard. No, all you remember is that adrenaline rush of the doof, 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 doof. You don't remember the kick drum. There might be a few tracks where you go, oh my God, the kick drum in Pete Townshend's Face to Face. It's like, whoa, when that comes in, you're like, whoa. But it's really the song in the mix. It's not the kick drum. Because you could pull that kick drum out and replace it with another one and probably not notice the difference. So we're going with this. If we're going to say, okay, we'll set that as a center of our mix. Everything else is going to revolve around this. So we find what feels comfortable. For the moment, we'll set that to 0 dB because we don't know any different. If we felt like it was too loud, we might pull it back, but let's set it there for now. What's the second most important thing? No, not the kick drum. This has a melodic part to it, so let's go with this guy. Now remember, the word was balance. We're not looking to mix this. Forget the term of mixing and all this producery bullshit that people go on about. We're just looking to balance this to make these two work together nicely. If we've said this is it, then we want to make this work with that. That's probably about right. There's a point where things are going to seem right. Some people really love faders. Which one are we on? That one. Yeah, that one there. No. I'm not very good at getting that right in this case. Really, I'm not. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. In theory, that's that one. Yep. If you like faders and you've got a control surface, then another way that you can go is, actually that's not the one that I wanted. 5, that's the one. Another way we can go is to use the sort of tactile approach, which is to set it running, use your fader, always from down low. I've come out to essentially the same point. It's important if you're doing that technique to go from down don't go from up, because everything that's louder sounds better. Everything. See how that's now become this instrument, the 70 Deaths instrument, the piece has become about that. Maybe it should be, but I've decided it's going to be about the FM'd guitar, so that's what we're going to do. We're not going to change tack halfway through. But by pushing this high, we won't like it to drop it. So we've said the FM'd guitar is it. We move our second instrument until it balances nicely with what we've decided is it. What's the next thing? I'm going to go with this. Okay, there are some things about it that I'm uncomfortable with, but this is what I've been sent to mix by myself. But this is what I've been sent to mix, so that's what we're going with. Now, we've got two drum kits. Remember, we've got this guy, and we've got this guy. Now, we could run just with this. It's got everything that you need in a drum kit. So are we going to set this level so that it's where we want it to be? And then bring up our main kick drum to complement it? Or are we going to do it the other way? I'm going to do it that way, because I know you like your kick drums real big and heavy. And we've just got our bass now. Now remember that we're doing this as simply as possible, so we're not going to get sidetracked with sidechain compressing the bass to the kick to the this to the that, because that's causing you more trouble than good. I know there are a few things that can only be achieved with that, but if your mix can only be achieved with that, then it's really you're making a sidechain piece, not a piece of music. And if you can't tell the difference, yeah, it's not my type of music, I can tell you that. Because when we listen to Hotel California, we're not thinking, ooh, sidechaining, or, ooh, look, there's a Gibson going through a this head and a that speaker. If we are, we're not actually listening to the song. When we're listening to Hotel California, we're thinking about stabbing steely beasts, or whatever the line is. Stabbing beasts with our steely knives. So we're just at this stage looking for a nice balance of all our parts. I'm going to say, yep, that seems reasonable. We're not going to sit there and find perfect. We're just going to say that's reasonable. Stage 2 done. Stage 3 was to panorama it, to pan things. Now, there's an obsession in the last 10, 20 years with extreme width. The problem with extreme width is the problem with extreme anything. The more extreme you get with it in a pedantic or one-eyed way, the less impact it has. So when we had most of our band playing down the middle and we put Glenn Tipton on one side and KK Downing on the other, Judas Priest was like, whoa, because it was amazing to hear that. It suddenly was this huge thing. When rap was in its early days, including things like California Love, which was, rap was mainstream by then. It was not cutting edge or interesting. It was mainstream. You listen to those mixes, they are very muscular, really down the middle. You listen to things now, and everything is panned right out here, past the edges. And the problem is you don't have a nice soundstage anymore, and you lose muscularity. Seeing we're looking to get the essence of our track, let's not immediately go to hard panning things. Let's look to see how we can just create some sense of space. Now, if you're sitting there going, but I'm not hearing things out here, then the problem is you're not interested in your music. You're only interested in how clever you are to do exactly the same thing as every other hack mixer is doing by panning things out to the side. And if it offends you to hear me say that, your business. You don't need to agree with me. But I'm going to ask you to listen to the point, because the great mixers, the ones that are lasting decades now, from the 50s, from the 40s, old Hank. You might listen to old Hank now and go, ooh, that's a bit of a scary sound. But, once you get over yourself, that stuff is stunning. It's haunting. And you know what? How many knobs they used to mix that? None. Because the guys had to stand around a microphone in the middle of the room. And if somebody was too loud, he was told to step back or play softer. That was mixing back then. That was balancing things up back then. And the music is awesome. Absolutely awesome. So, panning, subtle. Let's see what we've got. Our kick drum, thankfully, is in mono. Stereo kick drums can be actually very cool for effect, but be careful, especially if they're a big kick drum like this. What have we got with our kit here? That little fella is mono. Our bass is stereo. Now, this can be good, this can be bad. A stereo bass will seem nice and big. So when this sound was made, I've obviously gone, oh, we want this to sound as big as possible. When you're a patch designer, one of the problems that you face is the dichotomy between making what's going to be a really useful sound in the mix and making a sound that people are going to want. And making the sound that people are really going to want often means doing all the things that are going to cause problems in the mix. Hopefully, the person, when it comes to mixing, knows enough to go, yeah, let's undo all that stuff that made me like this sound in the first place when it was in solo. So we've got to have to make some decisions as to whether this stays in stereo or collapses down to mono. We'll come back to him. Pad is in stereo, so it should be. Our ARP. Let's keep running. It's actually mono, or mostly mono. And our guitar, basically mono. And that's fine. There's an obsession with making every single sound stereo. I'm not a big fan of it, because by the time you've made every single sound stereo and every single sound is operating from here to there, you've got no space left. Balance is all about balancing the sound with the lack of sound. So you know why this works? Because the kick's there and then the kick's not there. And then the kick's there and then the kick's not there. And then the kick's there and then the kick's not there. It's that balance of kick and not kick that actually makes it work. If it was just nothing but non-stop kicks, it wouldn't work. Might be amusing for a few seconds, like in New Order's the beach, not the beach, Blue Monday. Beach is the flip side. But you see, they fill the time, but they only fill it for a short amount of time, and it's a novelty, and boy, did it stand out then and now. Or if you want to go one harder, then Hilt, Stone Man. There is the single, Call the Ambulance Before I Hurt Myself is the album name, Hilt being an offshoot of Skinny Puppy, and there's a lot of Machine Gun 808 in that. Very cool record. Not for the faint of heart, as is anything that's got Skinny Puppy associated with it. So it's balancing. Now we need to balance, but we're not going to go hardcore about it. When it comes to panorama, there is some fundamental psychological rules about panning. One of them people will tell you is that the kick and the bass have to be in the center. Bullshit. You know why I know that? Because there were many records made like this. And it's a wonderful solution. It really is, because we've got our rhythm instruments, our kick and bass over on one side with lots of space. And we've got our melodic instruments over on the other side with a lot of space. And so it's very easy to balance up. Yes, it plays havoc with a club PA, but you know what? The chances of your stuff getting on in a club is actually very slim. So that rule is a non-rule. It's made up by people who may be trying to please the nightclub DJ, who's going to be freaked out when things don't sound the same. But the Beatles records were made that way. Velvet Underground records were made that way. Lots of records were made that way, and there's good reason. So don't fall into a trap. But as I was going to say, the psychological reasoning behind panning is this: that the fundamentals, so your kick, well, particularly your bass, your rhythm stuff, is going to go to the left, and your melodic stuff's going to go to the right. Think about almost any rock band that you see, and that includes jazz bands, the whole lot. So when we look at a rock band, a classic rock band, if we've got one guitarist and one bass player, we've got the kick and the drum kit in the middle. We've got the bass player over on this side. He's over on the left, over here. I have to get my left and right backwards because you see me backwards. They're there. So put them there in your mix, because that's where people expect them to be. This also represents the past. Psychologically, this represents the past, what we know, what we are comfortable with, our history. So you put it here. The other side, we would have our lead guitarist. This is where Pete Townsend stands. This is where Joe Strummer stands. And there's a reason for this, because this is the future. This is our hope, our dreams. Our fears can be here, but our hopes and dreams are here. So if you've got a melodic sound, clarinet and oboe or something like that, and you're not sure, put it over here. If you've got a clarinet and an oboe, then whichever is playing the more hopeful, more important part of the melody, put it here. The one that's less important, put it back here. Whichever is a more foundational part of your musical structure, back here. Whichever is more excitable and variable, put it out here. Very simple. So, applying those rules here, I can move my guitar out a little bit. Now, I'm not going to hard pan, remember. I'm going to move it out just a little bit. If I hard pan, I've got no space for my reverb to come around. Therefore, I will have made my mix smaller. I'll think I've made it bigger by going right the way out here, but the problem is, where's the reverb? It's got nowhere to come around. So by putting it in here, the reverb can come around here, which makes the room seem bigger than if we put it out here. Because then the room can only exist in the middle. So don't pan things too hard. You can, but pan them for effect, not for coolness or modernness of mixing. It's a bad idea. So we'll put this one, let's say 25 at. Actually, I'm going to go a little bit further. Can't hear panning in headphones. I hate panning in headphones. I'm going to move this the opposite way. You'll still hear that pad as spread out, but suddenly we've got some space. Let's go and have a listen already to what we've got. That's our Nothing Done mix. This one will seem like it's better because it's louder, but get past that. So we've gone from loud and centered and cluttered to something that's now fairly subtle and got a fair amount of width to it. Again, I can't tell how much width because headphones are just loathe them. We've used our basic rules. We've put our pad out onto the left and our lead out onto the right. Nice, simple solution. We've got this arpeggio, kind of clutters up the world. I want to move that a little bit to the left as well. That really leaves our guitar, our lead, out on its own on the right, which is a good thing. It helps to emphasize that as being this is the man apart. Gives it more power. Bass and the main drum I'm going to leave in the middle. We are going to need to look at the stereo of that. But this bit, our secondary drums, I think I'd rather it there. Depends what we're doing. If the drums were the feature of our mix, then yeah, probably we would put them on the other side. So we've got the heavy kick in the center, but because there's not so much drummy happening, it will shift a little. We will shift it within our brains and put the hi-hats and that funny little ratchety whatever's going on in there, because it's just beat map throwing random stuff at it. But I want that guitar to be really dominant, and as it is, it's loud, so we'll move this little bit of kit over slightly. I don't want it over too far. We've now got quite a wide mix between our reverb, which we can kill, hear how the mix just evens out and spreads out and becomes warmer and more organic as that reverb comes in. So again, and hear how our kick drum has actually become cleaner and clearer. Our overall volume's gone down, but that doesn't matter. We'll deal with that later. But we've now got a nice working balance and panorama of our tracks. So that's 3. Number 4 is tone. Now, people will get the most complex EQ they can find, Fab Filter Pro Q or something that's got trillions of sliders and crap on it. I'm going to use the simplest type you can find. It's what's called a tilt filter or a tilt EQ. I showed this briefly in a recent video on making pads. Very simply, what it does is it's a rocker. So the sound gets more bottom heavy or more top heavy. That's it. Just a tone control. And that's all I'm going to use here. So we're going to go through, again, we'll go through with our top to bottom approach. Do we want this to be brighter? Now, tempting to go to extremes, but it's not the first place you should go. You'll see I'm rocking back fairly subtly. Do we want this to be warmer? Or do we want it to be brighter? I think it wants to be brighter. Now we've changed our level slightly, or our perceptual level at least, so I'm going to adjust that at the trim. This arpeggiator. This one's an interesting fella, it really is. Let's see what we can do with this. Bright. so bright. I'm going to go with not so bright because we want it there, but you know what? This is not actually, from what we're listening to at the moment, adding a significant lot in terms of it's not melodic or anything. It's just rolling things along. Doesn't mean we should delete it, but it wants to stay fairly out of the way. So I'm happy with that. Then we've got our pad, which is far more melodic. I like just a little bit more warmth to it. It's always tempting with FM type sounds to but seeing we've decided to go with a slightly beatier approach, then we're going to relax the other instruments. Tiny bit. If we make every instrument bright, they're all going to fight with each other. You know, it's like having 5 sumo wrestlers try and jam through a narrow doorway. It's not going to end well. So the solution there is that they come one at a time, turn sideways, they get through the doorway one at a time. That's what we need to do with our mix and our tone. We've done it with levels, we've done it with a reverb, so now we're doing it with tone. So that's those ones. Bass. Yeah, let's have the go at the bass first. Sometimes I'll come back and I'll start with the kick and work our way through, but let's go with the bass. Easy to say, oh, it's a bass, it needs to be bassier. But the problem is, you probably already tell that it's starting to fight with that kick drum. And that's a bit of a problem. But how much do we want this bass to be detailed and noticeable? We can go bassy and turn down the level, or we can go brighter. I'm okay with that. Let's go with these again next. So where we're going, we'll keep going this way. So this is our little secondary drum kit. Tempting to make it very bright, but I'm not sure that's going to be the wisest solution. If we do, we need to pull it back. Now it shows off that little ratchet nicely, but my concern, and this is a me thing, EDM people will mix this otherwise, but this is my mix right now. You can make your decisions, but my concern with this being bright is that it becomes very twitchy and irritating. It's like having an itch. I don't want to feel itchy when I listen to music, unless that's the whole plan. We're watching one of the last Bourne movies, and was it Bourne? Actually, no, I think it was a Rookie. It was a Rookie, and they're doing a raid on a house, and as the music in the scene, they actually start playing a Daughters track. If you don't know Daughters, and I don't know a lot about them, and I can't remember the name of the song, but it's pretty full-on stuff, and it's actually cool. It worked really well in that situation. The tension that added to the scene was really good. So I'm not opposed to tension. I talked about Skinny Puppy before. It's not comfortable music. You don't want to fall asleep listening to that stuff, which is why the FBI used to use it. Or the CIA, whichever. CIA. So we can go twitchy on that light kit, bearing in mind that the person may feel like the whole time. I don't want that out of my mix. I absolutely do not want that out of my mix. In which case, we'll back it down a little bit and then adjust our level to see how it comes in comfortably. That's it. Now, if we were using more EQ bands, obviously we can pick and choose, but I'm deliberately showing this without to show you how simply we can do things and get a workable result. If you're still sitting there thinking, oh, but you needed to do this or this and this because you don't know what you're doing, I'm going to say you do not know what you're doing because you're obsessing about toys, techniques, but not obsessing about the music. I'm focusing on the music. Notice there, I'm making my decisions on, does this make me itchy? You might think, but that's weird shit, Benedict. Yeah, because music's supposed to make people feel things. If you want to write a piece of music to make people feel itchy, great, mix it that way. Deliberately go, what's going to make this person uncomfortable? I did something a year or so ago, around the beginning of the pandemic, and it made people very uncomfortable. They told me all the things that I'd done wrong with the mix, and interestingly, they were all the things I had deliberately done to the mix to make people feel that way. And there was nothing but EQ, let me tell you, there was no compression. I was told off for using too much compression. There was virtually none in the whole piece. Okay, our kick drum. Moment of truth. I know we want to do this, probably unwise. It just eats the piece. So the question is, how aggressive do we want to go? If we go like this, very aggressive. It's like poking somebody in the head with a pointy stick, and that's cool. That's a form that's been used plenty of times in rock, in EDM, in industrial, is to have a very bright kick drum. Doesn't have a lot of bottom end, just pokes you in the head every single time. Pantera's vulgar display of power. It's just the drum kit sounds like it's made of metal. It's brilliant. It's a lovely mix, and I don't know whether the guy's done much else, but boy, is that a hell of a record. But I don't want this to feel like I'm being poked in the head with a pointy stick. So we've gone a little bit warmer. Yes, it's given you a little bit more bass, but I'm more interested in that feel of the thing. I'm not looking for bass, I'm just looking for warmth, for it to settle into the track. Now, I could get into compression and do all kinds of stuff there, and probably get more level and this, that, and the other out of that track, but I said we're not going to do that. The whole idea of this is to show you how simply you can mix, and probably should mix until you can achieve these results before you start reaching for compressors. Note, no compressor in sight here. Even on the masters, we're running -6. To make up for the level, my infinite knob gives me what I need, and that's it. Yes, it is turned down 12 dB to give us a reasonable balance between voice and music here. I'm running only I'm running a little bit of saturation knob, just a tiny bit, to give us a little bit of... It gives us a level boost, but also just a little bit of presence. I like that fella. And soft clip, because that'll handle any overs that come within reason. And I know I don't work too loud. If you know that you might work too loud, then do that. It's not good to work too loud. And as I said, just for the recording, I've dropped 12 dB here. So that's tone. Let's listen to... Let's get rid of the visuals as much as possible. What the composer sent, and where we've got to. Yes, it's not as loud, and that's correct. But loud we can fix. So we're not doing any compression, we're not doing anything else. I feel like that mix is probably right. Actually, there is something, because, sorry, I've been working with the little bit. We really should listen to the whole track. I'd forgotten about this, but yeah, that stereo bass sort of bothers me a little bit. I know that we can be all kind of like, oh, but it makes the sound big. But it also, by being big, it steals the magic of the width of everything on top. And seeing everything on top is actually more important than the bass sound. Then I'd like to show you some things that you can do. Now, this is what we call automation, and can be rather cool in a mix. Should not be done if you don't have a purpose. Don't do it just to say, oh, look how clever I am, but it is a thing that that can and should be done in certain situations. So 64, and we'll start out there, and we'll reverse that here. So when the bass is the only thing in the mix, we're going to let that be nice and wide. When it's no longer important, it's no longer the dominant thing, then we drop it back. We may have dropped it back a little fast. That, by contrast, because if our bass was wide and then our other sound comes in and it's wide as well, they fight with each other because they're both out here going, look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me. Whereas if it was wide, we're going, ooh, nice big bass sound. And then our next sound comes in and our bass is here. We've actually got the perception that our sound, our next sound, our pad sound is out here. I've got my arms as wide as I can because our bass was here. Therefore, if this is wider, we've gone out here. Psychoacoustics. And we let it widen back out on the other end. Okay, cool. The other thing is that, again, I'm stuck with cans, but I'm thinking that maybe that bass, seeing we're paying attention to the bass, is that maybe there's something else that we can also do with that. I'm thinking, let's change our EQ, our tilt. Don't need that track, so we'll get rid of it. Let's actually just borrow this. Why do what you've already done before? And that is, let's go with putting this back where it is, 78. So that's making sure we end up where we were, and let's go with, see what happens. Great. Problem we've got, obviously, is that we've now got a level issue. Well, it sounds great because we turned it up. It's a little problematic. So 58. 58, but as it gets louder we need it to get softer. So what's that one there? 27. Let's see what we get. Okay, great, I got that right straight away. Perceptually our bass seems to be the same, at least it does in here. That's great. Now what I'm going to do is drag those over here and reverse them and drag them out. So we start with that nice warm bassy sound, which is allowing that kick drum to be quite dominant, and the bass is, it's warm and it's wide. Great. We don't realize now that it's narrowed down in every sense because it's playing faster. Okay, I probably want that to reduce A little bit more, because it becomes too obvious on the end. Okay, cool. So now we've got some automation there. That's moved that sound around in ways that people will not realize has happened, but give more feeling. It's possible we can also do something with this arpeggiator. Again, don't need that, so get rid of it. You'll see I never like to keep anything around that I don't have a purpose for. If it doesn't have a purpose, it goes. It's really important. I hate mess. I see a lot of people send over tracks and they're messy. They've left stuff lying around. Oh, I might want it later. You know, the great thing with a DAW is that you can just delete it and then make it again. People think the great thing with the DAW is that you can keep it, but that's a massive problem because you end up keeping everything that you ever did. Now, back in the day when I don't know, when Bowie was making his albums in Berlin with Eno and Visconti, if they didn't have enough enough tracks for another take for Fripp, guess what? They had to say, well, which one do we like the least? Erase it and have another go. Come on, Frippo. Get your hands off Toya and have another go. So they had to pick and choose. This is important. Commit to the path that you're taking. If you realize you went the wrong path, that's okay. God gave you undo. He also gave the ability to delete things. So if we've got no purpose for it, delete it. As soon as we know we've got no purpose for it, it will help you to move forward. I'm going to take that. Oh, what did I do there? Okay, obviously didn't end up with the result I wanted. That's all right. So 74 and 53. That's better. Because quite honestly, I need to establish this pad melody part as more important than the arpeggio. The arpeggio is just sort of leaping in. Good on it, but you know what? It's not meant to do that. It's not the star of the show. Much as it wants to be, he's not the star of the show. So we're going 68 here. Let's let it rise a little bit here. Say 80, but it needs to start down. It needs to start low. Let's try 32. Okay, I'm happy enough with that. May not be perfect, but I'm happy enough with it. Now notice what we get here. See if you can pick this. Did you pick what I'm going to say that I've noticed? And I think it's a great thing. It's not the thing that I was thinking of, but it's a perfect solution. In that, well, we had this being too loud when it started. We've pulled it back to what we said was going to be our set level here. But there was so much going on, but we can hear through particularly this, as the tone changes and dulls down, we can actually hear it do that. And while that may be a liability in some situations, this situation is good because it says there is change coming. Something's coming. I'm getting out of the way. Just as you see cars move out of the way when there's an ambulance coming, and even if you hadn't heard the ambulance because you're playing Metallica so bloody loud, seeing cars move out of the way makes you go, ooh, what's coming? And that's what we've done here. We're actually announced this sound's getting out of the way, something's coming. Which means when that first note of our guitar hits, we're looking for it already, which is good. That's good mix practice. I didn't plan for it, but there was a lot of conflict here, but now we've solved that problem. You can actually hear that note seems louder because we've announced it. We've said, look for what's coming. And we see it and go, it's what's coming. It's important. We've given value to that. So that's really good. Again, not sure because I'm in headphones, but what we've done there is moved that arpeggiator around a little bit. It just gets a little bit brighter and then fades away. So there's a little bit of movement in the end there because the guitar's not actually really doing anything any different at that point. So it's not as interesting, but those sounds are interesting, so we'll go with them. Let's A-B. Now this probably could go up a little bit. That's cool. I can hear that secondary kit a little bit better now. That's better. It's like I can hear that little secondary kick drum coming in, and it's like it's poking through. I'm enjoying how that happen. So I'm going to say that's a good mix. It's not about whether you think it's a good mix or not. It's about, I think I've told a reasonable story, bearing in mind our music is rather, well, uninspired. It's just an exercise, but we've got everything working. So that's our making sure we've got reverb, so we've got the right space. We've set an overall level for things, knowing that we might finesse it, but that's roughly, this is where our balance is. We pick our central point. In this case, it was the lead, the guitar. We balance everything to that. We pan things out so that we've got more space for each instrument to work in. We're not panning to say, look how stereo I can make this, because that's stupid, really stupid. We're panning to say, how can I make the most of these instruments? To put the leads, put the leads out here, where psychologically people are going to recognize them as being the future, the hope, what's exciting, what's pleasing, what's hopeful about this piece of music. We're going to put our basic instruments, our fundamentals, our rhythm instruments more over here, so that we are saying to people, these are the foundation, this is what you know, this is what you're comfortable with. So our mix is not panned for fun, it's panned for effect. And if you're panning to be able to show off to people, look how producery I am, then I'm sorry, but you really are just playing with yourself. hands out of your pants, work out what your track's trying to do, work out what you're trying to tell your listener. Not how clever am I, but what's this piece of music saying? What can I make it say? If it's not saying anything, if the composer has been lazy, what can we make it say? See how I've managed to make it say things here just with these. So we've got our panning done. We looked at tone. Tone's really important because it helps you have things rise or fall in the mix. The brighter something is, the more it will rise in the mix and come to the front. The warmer it is, the more it will tend to fall back. Now, you can use that to hide things, but that doesn't mean by making them warmer that you're making them go away. It just means that they sit in the comfortable, and then you've got your bits that rise above. So tone's really important there. So tone is done. All we've got left to do now is to finalize it. We don't need our sequencer. We don't actually need our mixer anymore. Where are we at? It's 1 hour and 11 minutes of your time. That's less than I thought. I'm getting good at this. So we're going to master this, and we're going to master this as simply as possible. If you don't have a saturation thing of any kind, don't put one there. Simple. You don't need it. I've just got it there because it lives there. Find what's going to be the loudest portion of our track. So let's put this into loop. Get your levels so that you are looking at kissing the bottom of Jesus's toe. That is what 0 dB. Jesus's toe sits on 0 dB. So again, we can move in threes and see what happens. Oh, we're at -3. It's great to have one of these meters. If not, you can do a great job just with this meter here. We need to be in both peak and VU. I still see people only in peak modes. But you know what? It's not telling you much of anything. You only need peak mode to know is it blowing or is it not blowing. So long as it's not blowing, you don't need to know anything in peak mode at all. VU is far more like how we hear. Yes, there's luffs as well, but I don't understand luffs. I don't even care to understand them. Where I compare my mixes against luffs, I still find out that I obey their luffy rules just fine. So dB work really well, and that's what you will use. So set to both peak and VU. At the moment, we're really not playing around in peak at all. I'm going to turn this down a bit, because we're going to get a little bit louder. Okay, we're starting to get a bit carried away here. Oh, I see what's going to happen. I'm actually going to turn this down. I thought that was strange. There is going to become a notable imbalance between speech and music. It's just inevitable because I'm going to let this come up so that you can see what we're doing. It's going to get louder. Everyone's been limiter for a long time, and that's fine. You can throw lots at them, and they'll just swallow it. I am not a massive fan of them. I've used them, but I'm realizing now that there are nicer things to do. There always were, and it's what I always used to do back in the old days, and that is what we call soft clip. So only a dB or so, let it go through to a soft clipper. That will be outputting Let's put that back here so that we can use this as a meter. If we are concerned that despite our soft clip, we might just be going, then set to minus 0.3 of a dB afterwards. This will always read -1. You might just clips, because we don't want any clips. So our VU meter is showing us our average level, which should sit about 12 dB, not much higher. If you want to mix hot, it can go higher, but bear in mind you're taking away dynamic range, and the whole idea of this type of mixing is not to mix it as loud as you can. That's just insane. Again, that's just hands down your pants kind of stuff, going, look how clever I am. No, if you love the music, you want the music to speak, which means you want it to be dynamic, so give yourself a crest factor of 12 dB. That is going to be a LUFS of between 10 and 14, depending upon how dynamic your track is or what you've done inside your track. Once I've got that, and I'm comfortable that it works across the whole piece, just working across the whole piece, make sure that you've got some sort of fade out or something at the end to handle, because you don't want sound happening at the end. So make sure that you've got a fade out. Commonly, I will leave 5 seconds between the last generally perceivable sound at normal listening levels and the official end of the track, which is going to be the start of the next track. That's a palette cleanser. Silence between tracks. But that's it. We've gone through our 5 steps. We've got everything done. And so there, with me babbling as much as I babble, all intelligent babble, of course, in 1 hour and 20 minutes, we've mixed a piece. It doesn't matter how long the piece is. We had this many stems. How many stems did we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Not exactly a lot, but we've mixed a 6-stem piece in an hour. Now, if it was vocals, it would have taken a lot longer than this, because it's not quite as easy as that. And if I were mixing this for real, I still would have taken longer, because I would have used more complex EQs and compressors and what have you. But that does not mean that you cannot or should not mix this way. I very much believe you should mix this way until you can get good mixes. If you can't get good mixes this way, bearing in mind that you will never achieve, EDM, everything running at 2 LUFS. If you can achieve nice balanced mixes, even if you have to turn your volume knob up a little bit when you listen to it, then you can start using more complex EQs and compressors and other shit. But please, if you've gone straight to doing that kind of stuff and you're struggling, stop yourself, pull right back, do mixes like this. Make yourself one of these tilt EQs, or you can get some for free. Hornet have one that you can get, well, sort of for free. You've got to give them your details. But tilt filter's not too hard to come by. If you've got Tokyo Dawn Labs Slick, the Gentleman's Edition, it's got a tilt filter, although it's on the subtle side. I think it's in that one. Anyway, tilt filters are not hard to come by. Tilt EQs, or you can make your own. Just try to get them so that they're fairly even here and not, you don't want to be making smiley faces or overly wonky lines. Nothing wrong with that, but just The idea is to have it a pretty even seesaw. Just play with that sense of tone. Do I want this brighter or warmer? And find the point where it balances. Once you bring that up, you're going to find, as I say, you may need to turn your volume up a little bit on your stereo when you listen to it, but it shouldn't need to be that much. And you will have a nice sound overall. And that, once you've gotten good at making things that sound nice that way and tell their story well and feel good, then you can start to use the other toys, and you will find that you come along far quicker. If you leap in and start trying to do tips and tricks and use advanced tools you don't understand, you'll completely bypass the whole idea of balance, and you'll make broken tracks. They may seem impressive because they're super wide and super loud and in your face and what have you, but they'll be broken because they'll have no meaning. There'll be no balance to them. So it's kind of like, and I'm not being sexist, but it's kind of like meeting a girl who's sort of gorgeous in every sense, but she's got one totally enormous hand. Now, being modern and PC, we're going to go, oh, but I'd love her anyway because it makes no difference. But you know what? If it was just down to looks and she's got this big-ass enormous hand, you're going to go, that one's broken. And biologically, that's fair enough, because do you want your children to have big-ass enormous hands? I'm trying to be a bit ridiculous, but at the same time to use something that we instinctively understand, rather than something that we get all postmodern about. So go back, work on balance alone as simply as possible. Put your reverb in, get your basic balance, decide what your important thing is, and balance everything against that. Work on your pans to create meaning, not to create pointless width, but to create meaning. Tone, set your tone, as I said before, what's bright, what's dark, just again, always with that balance. Finalize it, get it loud enough so that you can send it off to people and they don't have to turn their volume knob like 36 dB to be able to hear it. And you're good. If you have any questions, ask down below. If you realize you're just not great at this, that is a good realization to have, because you know what? Not everyone is great at this. Just as not everyone is great at playing Slayer. I bet if we went to George Benson, one of the greatest guitarists in the world, and we said, hey, George, we need you to go fill in for Slayer. You know, the guitarist's, broken his finger or whatever. You need to go play Slayer. I think his answer is going to be, yeah, thanks, but I don't think I'm going to cut that. And he's going to be right, because his thing is the jazz, the George Benson, the soft, lovely, soulful pop thing. George Benson playing Slayer, why, it would be amusing, and then probably to hear Slayer try and play George Benson and sing like him. Very amusing. We've got to understand what we're good at and accept what we're not good at. And George Benson is probably not good at playing Slayer, much as Slayer are probably not good at playing George Benson. So if you get into this and you realize, you know what, I love what you're saying, but I do it and I don't get it. I'm not good at this. This is not my thing. I'm good at playing guitar. I'm good at playing piano. I'm good at singing, whatever it is you're good at. Then stay good at that and hire in somebody who is good at mixing. Not somebody who's good at telling you how loud and wide they're going to make things, because they're just going to kill what you are good at. Find somebody who's going to find the beauty and the balance in what you do and present that, and work with them. Bring them on board. They become your person who translates what you do out through the mix. Because the more you work together, the better you'll get. Kevin the Caveman mixing Iron Maiden and Deep Purple and what have you. He was the man that everybody went to because he knew how to translate that sound. He was the sound of early heavy metal. Bob Rock later in sort of pop metal, Bon Jovi, Metallica's Black. It's about finding that person who will understand what you're doing and help you tell your story. So don't feel like you have to be good at this. Learn a little bit about how it works so that you can not tell your mix engineer what to do, but you can tell who is a mix engineer and who's just got their hands down their pants. If you think that I could be that guy for you, please be in contact. I would love to hear your MP3, have a discussion. If I think I want to mix your work, I will tell you. If I don't think I want to mix your work, I will tell you. And if we go further from there, I'll tell you what you need to know and help you get it done. You have a good day now. See you.